Hey everybody, today we're talking Superman Last Son, the Deluxe Edition. Hey everybody, welcome back to BK's Bullets. As always, I'm your host, Brent Casina. Today we're talking about Superman the Last Son. This is the Deluxe Edition. This is not to be confused with this other trade paperback more recently, which is called Superman Last Son of Krypton. This is something similar but different. So these two books have similar contents but different contents. And it's a little weird. I'll do a whole nother video on how to read Jeff Johns' run, but basically this has the first two arcs of Jeff Johns' run on Action Comics. It has the Last Son arc with Richard Donner, and also has the the Bizarro arc with Richard Donner and Eric Powell. This one just has the Last Son arc and then skips way ahead to the Brainiac arc with Gary Frank. But that's a different video altogether. So this Deluxe Edition, I believe I found it at Ollie's more recently. So if you have a local Ollie's, check it out. Always a great place to find some books for decent prices for sure. And I was kind of looking for this because I wanted to read Jeff Johns' stuff. I had the Last Son of Krypton trade, but this doesn't have the Bizarro stuff, nor does it have the Legion of Superheroes arc that takes place in between them. But this one has basically the first two, and this is more recent, I think, than that one, based on the logo, right? Like, it's got the more recent DC logo. Now it's the classic one, of course, but this was printed maybe only a couple years ago. Anyway, it's got some good stuff in here. I really like this story. 2021, okay. So only 4 years old, this collection, so you could probably find it pretty easily, I think. So this has a bunch of issues of Action Comics and the annuals number 10 and 11. The Action Comics issues are 844 through 846 and 851, and then 855 through 857. So I remember picking this up in single issues at the time. The big deal was that the Kubert brothers were coming to DC. So you had Adam Kubert on Superman in Action Comics, and you had Andy Kubert over with Grant Morrison on Batman. Andy Kubert stayed with DC way longer than Adam did. Adam did this, and then I think he did a couple of other things, and then he went back to Marvel pretty succinctly, and has stayed there ever since. Andy, I think, has been with, he might be bouncing back and forth now, but he's done more DC stuff than Marvel stuff, at least in the last 15 years, to my recollection. So if I'm wrong, don't hate me, right? But at the time, in single issues, this was a pain in the ass to read because this run started, it ran for 3 issues, and some of those issues were late. I believe one of them was in 3D. Like, there's an issue in here where Superman goes to the Phantom Zone, and I believe it had some 3D glasses and effects and things like that with this pencils and things like that. Am I remembering this correctly? Let me know if I'm wrong. But then it stopped suddenly. And I don't know if it was Richard Donner, if it was Jeff Johns, or the Kubert brother, if maybe Joe Kubert's health was failing, or they had responsibilities with the school that they run. But anyway, this is a long, long time ago. But the story stopped. So DC had Kurt Busiek come in and do some fill-in issues. In fact, Kurt Busiek did 3 issues before this called Back in Action, before this even launched. So this run kind of started late. Like, it was supposed to start at the same time as the Batman run with Grant Morrison, but it started a little bit later than that. So it was behind, I guess, from the beginning, and then you had some fill-ins with Kurt Busiek in the middle of this story arc that kind of played around with what was going on in the story, but aren't collected in this volume. Those Kurt Busiek issues have to do with Chris Kent, as he's called, or Lorzod, which is the kid that shows up at the end of the first issue, this beautiful art here, and this guy right here, and kind of fleshes out the storyline that feels kind of shortened when you read just the Jeff Johns and Donner issues here. Because at the end of the story, Chris is like, no, Lois and Clark were nice to me, don't hurt them, that kind of thing, because he's talking to the villain. And you're like, he just met them. How does he have any relationship to them at all? Like, he barely met Kent's parents. He met Ma and Pa Kent very quickly. Like, how does he have a relationship with them? Well, if you read those intermittent issues of Action Comics in between the big gaps in this run as it was coming out sequentially, you would understand where all, like, Chris Kent was around for a long time because these issues were so late, so far behind, that he actually developed relationships. All that storytelling is not here. I believe they're going to be collected in the next Kurt Busiek Superman, I think, volume. I think it's a hardcover that's coming out this year. So that should be in there also. But Last Son is a cool little storyline, and the art in here by Adam Kubert is just phenomenal. It is a little wonky sometimes with the way that he does the panels, honestly. He does these, he loves these double-page spreads, and I was thinking maybe it was just this, but when I go back and look at Ultimate X-Men, there's panels and double-page spreads in there that are also kind of confusing. Like this one, I remember reading this at the time and thinking all right, this one's clearly delineated because you have a vertical panel on each side of the page that separates it. But other ones are not so lucky. In Ultimate Spider-Man with Bagley has some of this stuff as well, where you're kind of like, where am I supposed to read? How does this make any sense? Like this one here, this is the number one thing I have against Adam Kubert. He does this all the time, right? So this page, if you're looking at it, you would think maybe it goes down, right? Single page. No, it's a double page spread with 6 panels split down the middle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you're only able to tell because this small Z carries over, and you can't see the panel border in this book because of the binding, right? So it's a little confusing. There's more examples of this in the book. This is just one in particular that's kind of a headache to read. But Ultimate Spider-Man with Bagley does the same thing from time to time. But yeah, there are some times where you will have to read a spread of pages a second time to get the timing just right because he does this stuff. But other than that, his art is incredible. Dave Stewart is doing the colors on this particular arc, and he does a great job. And they're doing something here where I don't know if he was doing inks on himself, if Adam was inking himself or not, but he does all the backgrounds basically it looks like they're in pencil. They're not inked, so they're kind of faded from everything else, and then all the main characters are either heavily shaded with a harder pencil line and then colored, or they're inked only. Only the main characters are inked, and you can kind of see it. There's some process pages in the back, but it's kind of hard to tell, and you're not going to see it on the video either. But it gives that example of oh yeah, this was definitely inked with a specific way of showing it. But I definitely feel some of the backgrounds are faded away, but this page isn't a good example. But the opening pages in that first issue are there. And then I remember at the time going to MegaCon in 2008, and the Kubert brothers were there, and he was drawing some sketches on cardboard, and that's how he gets this kind of brownish color to the paper. That's not Dave's. Some of it's Dave Stewart coloring, but a lot of it is him saying, "I'm going to change mediums per se, and use a different type of paper to get a different effect." So that's how you get all these cool little white highlights in here. Those are colored pencil. You can see all the little pencil stuff in here. When you look at it up close, of course, not in the video per se, but it's a really cool effect. And that's the same thing he's doing on the covers to this, right? This cover and the back cover on the hardcover is another Action Comics cover. So that's how you're getting that. This is actually drawn on a different kind of paper. I believe it was cardboard or something else, some other brown sort of paper that he drew it on. And that's how you're getting these different colors. You're like, where does this come from? I don't understand. It looks black and white. It's not. Maybe it is, but it's on a different kind of paper. But the interiors are great. But yeah, some of the images in here, the first couple in this first issue, are just phenomenal. I love this image of Superman shoving this guy up against the wall. This is Sarge Steel. He can take it, right? Just being where is this boy? This boy that crashed to Earth. I want to know where he is. He's really mad because he thinks this kid is being abused and things like that. But as we come to find out, of course, he is the son of none other than Zod, right, and Lara. And here's Nan over to the right. And this was also very confusing at the time because not 2 years prior, we had Superman for Tomorrow by Brian Azzarello and Jim Lee, and that also had a version of Zod. And then before Infinite Crisis, I think there was another version of Zod running around in Greg Rucka's Action Comics run, something like that. So this was 3 different versions of Zod within the last 5 years when this was coming out. So now this one is wipe all that stuff away. This is the real Zod. And this is kind of the version we've been living with ever since then. He comes directly from the movies. This is definitely like Richard Donner's version of Zod, and he looks just like Terrence Stamp, kind of with longer hair. All the imagery is reminiscent of Superman the movie, which kind of makes sense if you understand the relationship between Donner and Jeff Johns. Like, Donner started out, I think, as an intern on Richard Donner's Conspiracy. Was that the movie? It had Mel Gibson in it a long time ago in the 90s. And so they established a relationship there. But yeah, Jeff Johns always loved Richard Donner's Superman. So, of course, you have the Crystal Palace of the Fortress of Solitude. You have the holographic Jor-El, who doesn't look like Marlon Brando, but, it's the same type of idea, right? So they're coming out of the Phantom Zone. They're coming to Earth. They set a bunch of Kryptonians free. So you have to have Superman going up against a bunch of Kryptonians. And ultimately, I feel like this Kryptonian battle gets short shrift. I think maybe reading Invincible, where this same type of thing happens with all the Viltrumites in later volumes. In the Viltrumite War, like, there's more action in that. And that's ultimately what this should have been. But again, this is mainstream superhero comics, not Image Comics, so they can go a lot further there. And then also, too, it's only like 5 or 6 issues, right? So they have to finish out fairly quickly. But in the end, it kind of goes away, and you forget about Lord Zod for a while. I think he's back in the DC Universe now. If you read, he was running around with, Sinestro's kids, stuff like that. There was a mini-series running around in the DC Universe a little while ago. Zod had his own book, and Ursa was in there also. So this version of Zod sticks around after this with the new world of Krypton. He comes back, that kind of thing. And that's like I said before, that's the version of Zod we've been living with. Immediately following that storyline, and in the publishing story as well, you have the Brainiac story, or not Brainiac. I keep wanting to say Brainiac. It's Bizarro World. And I never liked this story, to be quite honest. I always found it really confusing. Mainly because I'm never really a fan of Bizarro, because he talks different, and it seems like DC and the writers can never figure out how exactly he talks. Some writers have Bizarro saying, me hate Superman, but since Bizarro talks backwards, he means the opposite of what he says. So if Bizarro says, me hate Superman, he's really saying, me love Superman. You have some of that in here, but towards the end of that 3 issues, all the residents of this Bizarro world start talking normally, and just like at the same time also talking in backwards speak somehow, like in the opposite of what they're meaning, because Bizarro is Superman's opposite. So it's kind of a mishmash of the different ways of Bizarro speak, and you just kind of have to figure it out as you go along. There's no real rhyme or reason to the way that they're speaking, and I think ultimately that's what brings the story down, because you have Bizarro in the beginning talking like you think he's supposed to talk, and then you go to his world, and then the citizens of his world and Bizarro, there's Bizarro Doomsday, all talking like different forms. And it's like, wait, what are the rules to Bizarro speak here anyway? This doesn't make any sense. So like here, Bizarro World hate Bizarro. Bizarro make Bizarros. So in this storyline, Bizarro made the square Earth that they're visiting, and he somehow made these other entities of Bizarro World through some new powers and things like that. So Bizarro World hate Bizarro should mean Bizarro World loves Bizarro. But that's not what's happening in the story. They actually do hate him. So, like, it goes back to my point of, like, how does Bizarro speak work? Just make sense of it for me. And it feels like they kind of abandoned the backwards thing mid-storyline and then just said, forget it. We'll just make Bizarro talk funny, kind of like Yoda does, right, to Luke Skywalker. So that's that. At the end of this, you have Action Comics Annual number 10, which came out kind of in the middle of the Last Sun storyline. So you had Mon-El popping up in here. So you got a new origin for Mon-El for the Legion of Superheroes. You had all these different versions of Kryptonite. You see Metallo get upgraded with these different versions of Kryptonite, which he uses in the Last Sun, which is important because he appears in Up, Up, and Away with a new Kryptonite thing. So this takes place after that. Here's a Gary Frank drawing right here. You can see that. And then it kind of ends. So, yeah, as a deluxe edition, like, I'm not going to recommend this. It's not a great deluxe edition per se, But if you are looking for this in oversized format, or you're just looking to find the Bizarro storyline right now, this is the place to find it, because you're not going to find it in any other trade unless you seek out just that Bizarro one on eBay from, way back in 2009 or 10, whenever it came out. So this is the most recent printing of that storyline, and I think if you're looking for that Eric Powell stuff, that's a good place to find it. And you can't lose with the Adam Kubert art in oversized format. It's a Rockstar winner. So overall, this Superman storyline, this book, it's pretty good. It's not great, and it's not one that I'm going to be like, yeah, definitely go check out. Like, it's kind of important because it reestablishes who Zod is for the DC canon going forward from when this was published. And it's stayed that way ever since, thank God. But yeah, it's overall it's pretty good to so-so, right? Like, it's kind of on a 6 to 7 on the 10 scale. We usually rate things out of 5, so it's kind of like a 3 to 4 star book. But yeah, it's fun, and if you can get it at a decent price, it's not a bad book to go seek out. So anyway, that's me talking about the Superman The Last Sun Deluxe Edition book. Let me know if you guys enjoyed this down below, and we'll see you guys next time in the Funny Pages.